What's going on, everyone, and welcome into Plaisance Podcast, filled to the brim with glitchy analysis and freezing cold takes, so cold that they're boiling hot. In this episode, we are going to be previewing the Tennessee Volunteers college football season. Let's get right into the stars. At quarterback, Nico Iamaleava. He is a young phenom who's gotten a lot of talks, especially in the NIL world. The valuations are in the millions. I don't see why not. This guy is a five-star recruit. He's been riding the bench for the last season, but that's because Tennessee has had some really good quarterbacks like Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton in the last couple of years. So he is going to be taking the starting role. He's the captain of this offense. We'll see how well he can steer it. At running back, Dylan Sampson, big chunk yards guy. I think he's going to continue to do that for Tennessee. This offense is lightning fast. And then at wide receiver, speaking of lightning fast, Squirrel White gave so many teams fits last year, and I think he's going to be doing the exact same thing this year. On the defensive side of things, there's only one guy to talk about. Top 5 overall projected draft pick in this next year's draft, James Pierce. Absolute monster on the defensive side of things. He's an edge rusher. He's probably the best in college football. I've seen him play about a half dozen times, and every time I see him, my eyes are popping off onto the television screen. So James Pierce, he's the guy to look out for on defense. Now, let's talk about a storyline before we get into the key losses and additions for this team. How explosive can this Tennessee team be this year? Now, last season, with Joe Milton at the helm, I don't think I've ever seen an offense as fast as this one. If you go back and watch that first game versus Virginia, I literally thought there was going to be fire that came off of Tennessee's pants for how fast they were able to fly down the field. The hurry-up offense under head coach Josh Heupel has taken another meaning, honestly. I mean, 1 second, they're down on the ground after a play. Literally 2 seconds later, they're lined up in formation, ready to start their next play. Now, the question is, how explosive? I actually don't know the answer to this. When you have a young quarterback come into a system like this, where the decisions are lightning quick and you've got to get an entire offense, all 11 players communicated on the same play in less than 5 seconds, that's really hard to do and a little overwhelming. So I think this offense is going to probably slow down a little bit, but if it stayed the same or maybe even got faster, I wouldn't be shocked just because Josh Heupel is such a talented offensive mind. But now let's get into the key losses and additions for this team. The losses side of things, you lose Joe Milton, an experienced quarterback, one that had a lot of promise. I wouldn't want to say let Tennessee down last year, but definitely this Tennessee team did not live up to the expectations that they were maybe projected to hit. So Joe Milton's still a huge loss, leading passer, honestly a pretty good dual threat. And then Tamarion McDonald, a safety, transfers to Louisville. He got some meaningful time on the field last year. I thought it was interesting that he transferred, but Louisville is one of those lightning in a bottle teams, and I could understand why you would want to go there and be a part of that. So those are two huge losses. On the addition side of things, you bring in Chris Brazzell, a wide receiver from Tulane. I think he's going to be a big part of establishing Nico Iamaleava this year. He is going to play a really big role, especially in the short passing game. I don't know how much of a deep threat he is, so keep an eye out for him. Lance Hurd, an offensive tackle for LSU, all SEC freshman last year, never got this permanent starting gig, but that's because LSU has got the 2 best tackles in all of college football. I imagine he transferred to Tennessee because he knows he can play and he wants to play. So I definitely see him playing a big part in shoring up this Tennessee offensive line. Then last but not least, Jermod McCoy, a corner from Oregon State, also not a permanent starter, but this Oregon State team pretty much collapses after they get left out of getting into a Power 4 conference, and their head coach leaves for Michigan State, I believe. So Jermod McCoy, he wants to play, and he wants to play on a team that matters, so he transfers here to Tennessee. Big guy to look out for in the secondary. He's going to be getting every single start as long as he stays healthy. Now let's talk about a couple more storylines. This Tennessee team has an extremely strong run game. They were top 5 last year, in my opinion, in running the football. I think we're going to see more of the same this year, especially with a young quarterback and how fast Josh Heupel can play. That is a massive part of why this Tennessee offense is so successful running the ball. It is so easy to run the ball down an opponent's throat when every single time they get a spare second, they're heaving for breath. So if they can keep the foot on the gas, the foot on somebody's throat, they're going to do it. They're going to run the rock. So I think this Tennessee team, if they're going to win, it's going to be by running the football. If you look at the games last year that they lost, I think they lost 4 football games. All 4 of those games versus Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and Missouri, they did not have a 100-yard rusher. Anytime that they had a 100-yard rusher, they were undefeated. So that is a massive key to Tennessee's success. Keep an eye out for that. They're going to try to establish the run, especially early. Now, the last storyline I want to talk about before we get into the record prediction, how much patience is there with Josh Heupel? I mean, we have seen Tennessee pass through coaches ever since Philip Fulmer like knife through butter. I mean, doesn't matter how quickly a coach comes and goes. Tennessee just cannot seem to establish success on the long term. But I think Josh Heupel has the capabilities to do that. But when you have to play Alabama every year because it's one of your permanent rivalries, and then on top of that, you got to play a Georgia, an LSU, a Texas A&M, a Texas. It's really hard to win 10 games, 11 games, year in and year out. I think that's what Tennessee fans want. I just don't know if you're going to get it with Josh Heupel, especially considering you have to play against Alabama. And in the 3 years that he's been coach, they are 2-7 against Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. They beat Alabama and Florida back in 2022, but other than that, not a single win against one of those programs. How much longer can he keep that up? I'm not sure. 2 or 3 more years of that, and I think that the Volunteers will probably be calling for his job. But without further ado, let's get into the record prediction. I've got Tennessee going 9-3, which honestly, pretty confident season. It's definitely over their win total, but let's go ahead and get into the games. Chattanooga, NC State, Kent State. I'm a firm believer that Tennessee can win all 3 of these games, especially the Chattanooga and Kent State game. NC State will be in a neutral site. I'm not sure where that is, but I think NC State is probably reeling over the last couple of years. I think that Tennessee's got the offensive talent and the defensive talent to win this game big, so I'll give Tennessee the win there. Then they go at Oklahoma. And although this Oklahoma team is not fully established into the SEC yet because they haven't had to play a schedule like this, I still think that going to Norman is a dangerous place to play. And Oklahoma's defense is going to eat this young offense up alive. I think that Oklahoma gets the win here. Tennessee takes the loss. At Arkansas, at home versus Florida, those are 2 matchups where if they were in different settings during the season, I could see these 2 teams winning these games. Maybe not Arkansas as much, but definitely Florida. I give Tennessee the win, especially versus Florida at home. That's a really hard place to play. Neyland, don't even get me started with that. I have seen them beat Alabama at the peak of their power there. I'm a firm believer that they'll beat Florida. But then at Arkansas, once again, I have said this over and over throughout the rest of these record predictions. Arkansas does not have stability, and that is the number one thing you need to win big college football games, especially versus a team like Tennessee. I'll give Tennessee the win there because Arkansas does not have that stability. Then they host Alabama. I think this game will be closer than most people think, but Alabama comes in and gets the win. Their revenge game in Neyland Stadium since they lost in 2022. But then they host Kentucky and Mississippi State. Both of these teams are not quite ready to contend with the premier talents of SEC college football. Tennessee can get both wins there. At Georgia, that is a close game, but I have to give Georgia the home field advantage. I think they're also a little more talented and have a better coach in Kirby Smart. At Georgia's a loss. Then hosting UTEP at Vanderbilt. The talent difference is enormous in both of these cases. I give Tennessee the win there easily in both of them, probably by combined like 40 points minimum. So Tennessee finishes 9-3. I think having Bama on your schedule every year is a pain. I've said that before and I'll say it again. But this team is a little young and they're getting better for next season. It could be their year to contend for a college football playoff spot. But that's going to do it for this episode. Be sure to tune in to us next time. We're going to be talking about Texas A&M. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.